Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of That Tom Clancy Show. I am, of course, your host, Mr. That Tom Clancy. Again, I have no idea why I have given myself such a formal title, but hey, it is what it is. So it is now Tuesday, July the 21st. I don't even know why I'm bothering to check the date because I know exactly what the date is. If any of you saw on social media or missed on social media, today marks for me a very important date. Today I am 15 years clean and sober. So, hooray me. But that's not why we're here today. We're here because I have a guest. Surprise, surprise. It's a show with guests. I don't know why I thought that was going to be important. But my guest today must have been a huge fan of ant farms when they were a kid. That or they took a few too many entomology courses in college. Bix and Pixels, may I introduce Mike from Slug Disco. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. So, real quick, were you a fan of ant farms as a kid?
Yes, I was. I never
Okay.
got to own one, unfortunately.
I can't imagine why parents wouldn't want their children having a box full of pests
Yeah,
in their
small
home.
critters that can get into food and disrupt things. Yes.
Yeah, they do tend to do that, even if they do have a silly little plastic farm to live in. But, you know, darn exploring creatures. So, really, I guess, Empires of the Undergrowth. I know what it is. Liam knows what it is. For everyone else who might not, would you mind giving us just like a real quick rundown on your silly little ant game?
Absolutely. Yeah. Empires of the Undergrowth is a RTS simulation game, so a real-time strategy that features ants as its main protagonists. So you will build up an ant farm, or an ant colony, we should say, rather than a farm, and you will combat enemies, other colonies, big critters, small critters. You will harvest food from both your enemies and from plant sources, and you will somehow eventually become the greatest empire of the undergrowth.
Nice. Expert Archer, thanks for joining us today. Glad you could make it. Um, yeah, it's definitely a very interesting idea, especially because your media gives it this very kind of grandiose sense to it, which is fair, as ants are one of the most widespread types of animal on the planet, and by biomass, sure beat us in terms of life volume on the
Indeed,
planet.
indeed.
And two, it's looking at it from just a ecological standpoint. We like to think of ourselves as the masters of the planet, when in reality, if we didn't have ants, uh, life on Earth would look extremely different.
Totally, it absolutely would. So all of these, it's microcosms. I mean, it lives at all scales, from where we are to ant scales to even lower to microorganisms. There's empires everywhere. And one thing that I remember someone saying once about the music that we have in the game was, it's a bit dramatic for ants, isn't it? And I replied, not really. Ants live dramatic lives. It's just at a different scale from us.
Yeah,
It's certainly an empire. They have their own empires. Empires rise and fall.
yeah. I mean, there was that BBC special with the David Attenborough narration that unfortunately we never got access to over here, because why would we crazy Americans want top quality nature documentaries? That would just be crazy.
The BBC do it the best.
They really do. Like Blue Planet is my Blue Planet, and Blue Planet 2 are my personal favorites. Mostly because I do have a missed calling as a marine biologist, but I'm very happy to settle for being a robot on the internet. Um,
It suits you.
I'm glad some other people think so. Uh, but it really is this interesting idea, because ants lead these giant dynastic lives.
They do. Some of them flourish to be to live for decades, and some of them last a few months, all depending on martial strength, a bit like the real world.
Yeah.
They're a bit too close to human beings in that respect.
Yeah, we do love to think that things like war are creations of humanity, but here we are. Ants have been waging it since long before mammals were the dominant life form on the
Totally,
planet.
totally, yeah.
And
Conflict is the driving force behind evolution.
exactly. And they've actually had several amazing movies with ants as the antagonists. My personal favorite is, of course, the 1950s classic, Them. Uh, if you haven't seen it, it's really
I, I
good.
I have not, but I think I may have caught parts of someone streaming watching it the other day.
Jensen, especially for a 1950s movie, it's absolutely
Yeah.
excellent. Because they always take the ants as a credible threat. It also helps that they're the size of, trucks, but they're always a credible threat because it's, the idea of all for the colony, all for, the hive,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely, and that's kind of how ants work. I mean, to some extent, you can apply the analogy to human civilization as well, but it's a bit easier to see in ants, in that you can imagine a single ant as a cell in an organism, and an individual ant is not very important to the colony as a whole, and will give its life for the colony. And that's certainly a theme of our game. When an ant dies, another one will spawn in its place. So ants are expected to die. It's impossible to win a level on our game with no ants dying. It just doesn't work that way.
challenge accepted.
Okay, maybe we'll add that as an achievement that no one will ever get.
But no, they are just these really interesting creatures, and I mean, they're top tier engineers. They're up there with
Yeah,
us and termites.
indeed.
They're just they're they're brilliant when you think about it, because I mean, they figured out agriculture. They've
Yeah,
figured out animal domestication.
absolutely. Both of those
They
feature in our game, by the way.
Nice. The only thing that we don't know that they have, because we probably just don't have a cultural framework to look at it, is they don't have things like art, to the best of our understanding.
You
You
say
know.
that, but there is a certain kind of ant. I'd have to look at what kind it is that will collect the skulls of its enemies.
Okay, I'm down for that. Are they
It
in
will
your
collect
game?
trapjaw skulls. Yes, they're not in our game yet. I don't know if they will be, but it was something I read the other day, which I thought was interesting.
We could call them the predator ant, and
I guess we could.
yeah, they collect the skulls, and yeah, I'm down for
Yeah,
that.
it might not be a very nice art, but you could consider it art.
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, let's see. Let's look at the earliest depictions of human art. Yeah, the earliest depiction of human art were actually probably a generally positive thing. So, I mean, ants, you got
Yeah,
some way to go.
this is true. This is true.
But then again, I mean, the height of their technological prowess is using whatever passes for their saliva to function as miniature concrete with sand. So, while an
Perhaps.
amazing feat on its own, it's not like they've mastered the Bessemer process and are, making steel eye beams.
I don't think you could explain trigonometry to them.
Fair. But so you mentioned just a moment ago, a difference, the whatever the one is that captures skulls. Are there going to be multiple species of ant that the player can choose in your game? Or
Yes, at the moment there are four species the player can play as directly in the campaign. We have Formica fusca, which is a quite large but common kind of black ant, particularly in Europe. We've got Formica rufa, which are known as wood ants. They're um, existent in quite a lot of the world, and they squirt acid from their abdomen, so they're our range units. We don't have to make these things up; they exist in nature.
Yeah.
Which is nice. They have RTS-like things anyway. And we have the leafcutter ants, which have huge majors, and they don't eat meat at all, or at least very little. So they harvest leaves from the surface and bring it to their nest to create fungus, which they then eat. And then we have our fourth species of ant, which is our fictional ant, which is called Formica erecta, which roughly translates to gene thief, as in erecta is thief. And they're our fictional species because we thought it'd be fun to allow the player to play as all ant species in the game within one colony. But they're fictional, and we have this whole framing in the game of these two scientists who have created this species and are now testing them as a form of genetic engineering. Of course, it's not something that happens in nature, but we thought it'd be a bit of a shame to have all these species in the game and not be able to play of them all as once. So Formica erecta is our fictional species that tie everything together.
Well, that just seems irresponsible.
Absolutely. And anyone who's played the game will see that the scientists, at least one of them, is a little bit irresponsible, is probably a very British understating way of putting it. Yes.
Nice. Well, Fictional Cat, hello, Raptor575. Thank you for joining us today on the show. For those of you who are just joining in, I am joined by Mike from Slug Disco, which has got to be one of the best studio or team names I've heard in recent memory. Where did it come from?
Oh, there's conflicting ideas on this, but I think the one that I like the most is the other three guys on the team. That's John, Liam, and Matt. All used to live together in one house, and they were feeling lazy one night, and they all brought in their sleeping bags to the living room. And then one of them commented, "Hey, it's like a slug disco," and that kind of stuck. But yeah, because they were all in their sleeping bags. It's a weird origin story, I know, but it's also kind of relevant for our invertebrate kind of theme of our game. Yeah,
I think it's weird that they were lazy, so they went and got something to sleep in, and then bring it back.
Yes, I mean, these things were literally less than 20 meters away.
Yeah, I mean, but when at the same time, I mean, they could have just as easily gone to their appropriate beds.
True, but they wanted to hang out, I think is the point.
Okay.
Hence it being a disco. Yeah.
Well, that's probably not the worst name for the worst name or the worst story behind it either. I imagine that they probably also have like the crazier, more fun name or reasoning behind the name too, where
I'm sure they do, but I'd have to ask them specifically about that. I'm not sure if they want to give up that information, but yes.
Well, we'll see what we can do. I was about to ask like some silly thing like, to everybody watching on YouTube, if I get X number of thumbs ups on this video, I'll follow up with that answer. But no, I'm not going to do that because that's just silly and I can't actually make that promise. So are those the only ants that you're going to have in the game, or do you have plans for additional ants as well?
No, we definitely have plans for more ants. Coming next in our next, we call them tiers of the formicarium. The formicarium being the kind of, you imagine it like a vivarium or aquarium, but for ants. The formicarium is where your home colony of gene thief ants live. The next tier of those is going to be fire ants, which I know are notorious, particularly in North America, as being quite painful and difficult to deal with and very invasive. And we've got some fun plans for them.
Well, I mean, they're invasive because they can form up into a giant waterproof ball and just go wherever they want.
They're quite difficult to deal with. In it, they have one of their gimmicks in our game for them is going to be bridges. They'll be able to form bridges using their own bodies to cross bodies of water to reach otherwise inaccessible resources and areas, which is kind of fun. And a few other little bits and bobs which you haven't quite revealed yet, but that's all to come because we are an early access game.
Yeah. I was actually going to mention that Empires of the Undergrowth is presently in early access and there's an available demo.
There is, yes. If anyone would like to play the demo, you can play 4 levels as the black ants, the Formica fusca, and 1 level called the Crucible as the leafcutter ants, which is a much more interesting level. The other levels we did quite a long time ago, but the Crucible, which features leafcutter ants, is quite involved, and I'd highly suggest anyone who is thinking of buying the game give that level a go first. That's all in the demo on Steam.
Yeah. I have this weird feeling that the pure ants, if you will, are going to be the ones who are going to be more difficult to play.
How do you mean?
Well, it's if you're not relying on the genetic thievery of being the engineered ant species, you have a much more specialized niche in the environment.
You're entirely correct. Yes, you're absolutely right. This is certainly a thing. We have obviously we have a campaign mode which isn't finished yet, but we also have a free form. We call it free play mode. It's not quite sandbox, but free play, where you start as an ant colony. There's no particular goal unless you specifically set one. And if you play as a gene thief colony, which has access to all the abilities of the other ants, you are going to have an easier time of it. So there are some things we try to do to balance that. But you can also play as the black ants, the wood ants, or the leaf cutters. And they obviously have their different niches, as you say, which exist in nature. And that gives them a harder time. But when you combine all those niches together, you have a pretty much blanket covering of things, which of course makes things easier.
All right. Now, this is kind of a selfish question that I have here,
Okay.
but it's because I love the animal that I'm about to ask about.
Okay.
Do you have pangolins in the game?
We do not. The reason for that being a pangolin would probably take up the entirety of the map and then some.
Well, I mean, a great pangolin, sure. But I mean, there are smaller species of pangolin as well, generally native to
Yes,
Southeast Asia.
the famous minuscule pangolin, which is 5 millimeters long. That could maybe get into our game, but otherwise,
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit out of our size range.
Okay, I just asked because they are adorable and lovable little animals, and I have one of them
They are.
tattooed on me. So
They are absolutely adorable little animals. Do you know what? I'm not gonna promise you, Tom, but we'll see if we can get at least a reference to pangolins in the game. How about that?
I'm down. I'm so
Okay,
down.
we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I'm really down for that because I mean, this is since we're talking about a game that takes ecology and biology so seriously in its design and everything. I'm going to take my brief moment to be uh pangolins are one of, if not the most trafficked animal in the world. And if you haven't seen one before, they are adorable. And the great pangolin that's native to Southern Africa walks around like a freaking T-Rex. And how can you not love that?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Obviously, our game being definitely nature based. Of course, we're in tune with those kind of things, and animal trafficking is terrible, and climate change is real, guys.
Dude, I like this guy. I didn't even have to prod him for that one. But
No, it's true. What do you want me to say? It
yeah,
shouldn't be
no.
a political issue.
No, it really shouldn't be. Also, wear your masks. I want to be able to travel outside of the country again.
Do that as well, please, guys. Yes.
Yeah, because like it's kind of like yeah, just real quick, like little political moment here, where being an American citizen is really such an easy way to get around the world because, with the exception of a couple countries, you can pretty much just go anywhere, and nobody makes you get a visa or gives you any problems at the border, And now we literally can't go anywhere. Like, guys, wear your freaking masks. The rest of the world is great, and we should all be able to go to it, just as they should all be able to come here without
Yes, I would
risk of
like to go
getting
to
crazy
America,
sick.
but I don't really. That's not on the cards right now.
Dude, I don't even like leaving my house right now. But, that's neither here nor there. We're here
It isn't.
to talk about ants. So just, did I spy a hermit crab in one of those screenshots on Steam?
Yeah, we've got hermit crabs. Hermit crabs are in the second Formicarium tier levels. They're enemies that exist on the surface. Their gimmick is they're tanks. They don't do much damage, but they live a long time. And when they hide inside their shell, they regenerate health. But yeah, they're quite cute, and they come in a variety of colors.
Can I farm them?
Can you farm them? You could
Yeah,
farm them in. You could farm them in free play mode, I guess, when they appear. Yes.
okay, because I would just like to, I don't know, keep my own free range hermit crabs that I could probably try and push to a battlefield just to soak incoming damage.
We've got a level. In fact, we've got the campaign and free play, and then we've also got extra levels we're adding on top of that. Because as long time fans of us know, our we're a small team and with quite an ambitious project, and getting our big updates out does take us time when we're designing new art and new systems and writing scripts and things. But in the meantime, we can use existing assets to do extra levels. And one of those smaller extra missions, you play as a spider. So maybe we could do a level where you play as a crab. We could do
I'm
that.
of course down. Because, why not? That said, though, spider level. Yeah, expert archer. I'm in Australia, so we've got a pretty good just rub it in, expert archer. Just rub it in. But at the same time, I also don't have to worry about saltwater crocodiles, freshwater crocodiles, any of the most deadly snakes or spiders on the planet. So that's pretty cool. I'll take that. I'll take that. I love Australia, never been, but I do also love poking fun at them because they have like the most dangerous spot of land on the planet.
That's that's the well, I was going to say that's the joke, isn't it? But it's pretty much true.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of their wildlife.
it's any mammal that lives on that island is basically playing life on hard mode. Oh man, even the birds are jerks too. That's kind of nuts when you think about it. But you know, so I'm gonna take a guess here, and I'm gonna say that you guys were inspired by Sim Ant.
The guess is incorrect, I have
What?
to say. Yes, I know that's a bit of a weird thing to say, but none of us had played Cement before we started this project. And in fact, I think only I was vaguely aware of it because I used to be subscribed to Amiga format, I think, back in the day. And at one point, I saw an advert for it. I don't know if it was ever out on the Amiga, but the primary inspiration for our game is Dungeon Keeper. And that's where it came from. And most of us on the team, well, in fact, all of us on the team are fans of the natural world, and particularly Matt, who's our artist and kind of engine expert. Since he was little, has been fascinated by creatures. So when we came to want to create a dungeon keeper like game, the obvious theme was let's make it insect based, and what's better at base building than ants? So that was the inspiration for it. But no, in our market research for the game, we discovered Simant and have since played it. Of course we have. But no, it was not our inspiration.
Huh? Yeah, because Sim Ant was I grew up using Apple computers because my
Mhm.
family is weird. And Sim Ant was one of those few games that was available
Sure.
for Apple. So I played a lot of it as a kid. And SimCity. I was good at one of them, and it wasn't the one about people. So it's always just kind of, when I saw originally discovered your game as we were putting together the Picture Game Awards, I was like, oh, it's like modern day Sim Ant. So it's kind of
there are,
interesting to see that
yeah.
I'm basically incorrect.
Well, you're incorrect in kind of where the inspiration came from, but you're kind of correct in kind of can we consider this kind of convergent evolution?
Yeah,
A lot. A lot of our systems are quite similar to Simant. The digging system is very similar, for instance. It's so we've had the same ideas as the makers of Cement, and I've just looked it up. It was on the Amiga. I wasn't going crazy. Yeah.
it's fine. If you're going crazy, that's also perfectly okay. You're in good company on this show.
Fair
I
enough.
think I'm a robot on the internet. Uh, well, how would an Australia level be? Or how would a level in Australia be? I imagine extra hard mode. Are there, like, this is going to be one of the most ignorant entomological questions that has ever been asked, but are there even ants in Australia?
Of course they are. Ants exist on every continent apart from
And
Antarctica.
yeah. Okay, I figured, but at the same time, I don't see National Geographic specials about the deadly ants of Australia. So it just
That's
leads
probably
me to
because
believe, that
not
they're
many
not
National
there.
Geographic people want to go to Australia, probably. Um, but no, there are, for instance, I know there are certainly honeypot ants in Australia, which uh, uh, store honey or nectar, sugary substance in their own bodies as kind of living larders. So yes, there are definitely ants in Australia.
Can we call them Winnie the Ants?
We need the ants. Sure,
Yeah.
why not?
Man, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. It's just how many, just the diversity of ants, and then
Mhm.
to
Oh,
how
yeah,
yeah,
in some ways, it's our curse. This
yeah,
we
uh,
um we have threads up on our forums of species you'd like to see, and there are literally thousands that people have put, and we've got to choose just a few because there's only three of us, and we don't have an infinite amount of time. So we have to really decide that get our focus down. But with so many interesting species, of course, people are going to be disappointed, and we are going to leave out some really cool kind of natural abilities that ants have because we have to choose some over others. What are we supposed to do about it?
yeah. I mean, it's because you have like those like things like army ants that are
Yes.
fabled across the world for their
Yes,
ability to strip animals clean and just destroy everything in their path.
which are in our game, by the way, as enemies, but not as playable
Yeah,
species.
because I think as a player that would be kind of, for lack of a better word, boring.
Yes,
Or I think
the species. Yeah.
monotonous. Would
Well,
be
yeah.
yeah.
This we have to. Yeah, that we have to focus things down. Army ants in particular wouldn't fit into our kind of system we have as playable ants because we have a kind of an underground overground system, like where ants are buried underground and and have an overground that they go to. But army ants don't do that. They form nests that are made of their own bodies, so they don't dig underground. So it wouldn't really fit. But they are really cool ants, so we have them as enemies. The species is Essiton butchelli. If anyone wants to look them up, those are the ones that are in our game.
Also, too, like, I mean, that would make for an excellent antagonist too, because when those guys come knocking at your door, it's the point where it's like, well, you better have a back door,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
no one's stopping them at the front.
No,
Uh,
they won't. The level they feature in, they sweep across the map in waves. In a literally foraging trails, like an army, would marching, and you've got to push them back to keep them away from your leaf cutter nest. It's really cool. It's a really cool idea, and the music's great in that level as well. It's very dramatic.
I have no doubt. Now, I do ask you, Mike, if you would join me in doing a dab real quick, because Fictional Cat, one of my mods, makes everyone dab on the show. So at
Right,
least he's fair
sure.
in that fashion.
Right, done. I'm. I understand that it's a fun thing to get boomers like me
Yeah.
to dab, but that's fine. I was doing a stream the other day and I put a shoe on my head, so I don't really care.
Mike, if you're a boomer, then like, what's that make me? Like greatest generation? Because we can't be more than 5 to say 8 years off in terms of age.
Well, I'm 36, which technically makes me a millennial, I think.
Yeah,
But
I turned
but
38 this year, so
yeah,
yeah.
so there you go. So I know the Zoomers like to call us boomers, but there we go. Yeah.
I don't know how old Fictional Cat is, but I get the feeling he's not a Zoomer. But if he is, he's like, yeah, 33. So he's a millennial with us. Okay, boomer. But
There we go.
that was like, I gotta say that I absolutely adore when that came out, the whole okay boomer thing. Because my day job is I work as a barista at Starbucks, And there's a lot of
Oh,
things you wish you could say to some of your
oh, you know
customers.
what? Yeah. And until recently, I worked in hotels in the service industry as well. I
Oh
understand.
God.
Yeah. The pandemic has put a stop to that. I've been able to concentrate a bit more, being full time on Slug Disco. So I'm lucky in that respect. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, Tom. Yes, I've been in that industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also worked in hotels before too.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes. Yeah. You get it. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
100%. Yeah. Oh man, Liam, 38. God, it's good to see that there's a lot of people in our age bracket who are in, game development too. Because when you think about it, it's, we were growing up at about one of the best times. Not necessarily in terms of game development or society or anything, but we're old enough to remember pretty much where it all started, and it is helping to inform where to take it. And
Yeah. I
you
see
know,
where you're going. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, it's my first video game experience was an Atari 2600 and or an Apple II, one of the two. It doesn't really matter which one because we had both at the same time. Um,
Mine was the ZX Spectrum.
I know that name, but I don't think I ever actually saw one in like real life.
Uh, very very fond memories of the ZX Spectrum. I'd Yeah, it was where I first learned to code as well. It had a basic system. I mean, I'm not up to speed on Unreal Engine. The other three guys who are on the team are the Unreal Engine guys. I do a bit with Unreal, but yes, the very first game. Game system. Well, it wasn't a game system. It was a microcomputer that I ever used with the ZX Spectrum, which had a tape loading system,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to type in commands even to load anything from a tape. So yes, from the very get go, we had to learn at least a very basic amount of code.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up on Apple computers, but
Uh-huh.
I had all my friends were, of course, on Windows or MS DOS, and to do, MS DOS, of course, having to figure out command line. Even Windows, when it switched into like 3 and 3.1 time, so many of the programs still required you to run it through MS DOS. Um, Expert Archer says, I'm 19, almost 20, and I wish I knew how to develop a game. Um, the only thing I have to say to that is, what's stopping you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go, my friend. There's loads of resources online. You do not have to spend any money to do so. Um, go and make the most basic game. Make a program which says hello world and then goes back to its first command line, and then the world's your oyster after that.
Yeah, I mean, I know I would recommend Unreal Engine because I
So
love
would
it.
I, for
Um,
obvious reasons.
yep, we're both developing in Unreal, in the security and police firefighter, and there's nothing saying you still can't do it as a hobby. Especially now, the barrier for entry for becoming a game developer or even just a game developing hobbyist is so low compared to what it used to
Absolutely.
be. Just about any computer that can run a game can run a game engine,
Your
and run it
most
pretty well.
basic laptop can run something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm not working, or when I used to work on things that weren't VR related, I would just keep everything up on GitHub as so I could work on it on my desktop and then also work on it on my laptop. But now that I do mostly VR work, I need a dedicated space for it because I'm also using Steam VR support. I'm not using like
Of
an
course.
Oculus setup and blah 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 blah. But yeah, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with like picking up Unreal, Unity, Godot, Game Maker, and just playing around with it and having fun.
The only
Um,
thing I think is it can be a bit overwhelming, perhaps, because there's so much out there and there's so much you can do. But like any skill, just start small and learn things. And within not too much time, you'll find yourself doing things you never imagined you'd be able to do.
Yeah.
just a short time ago.
And also, too, I mean, there's the great internet repository of knowledge of YouTube that,
Yes, it's there.
yeah,
Yep.
that didn't even exist really as it is now 10 years ago.
No, when I was very young, I had to use books. Can you imagine?
Oh
Like
my
books made of
God.
trees.
God, I hate reading. No, I'm kidding. I love reading.
Ah.
Um, I hate reading nonfiction, but I love reading. Um, yeah, I read about 15 to 20 books a year.
Big
So,
reader.
well, I mean, like, reading's great.
Reading is good.
To kind of touch on something I opened this the show with, 15 years clean and sober today, but it wasn't until
Congrats.
really that time that, like, before that I hated reading, and since then just my reading has grown and grown and grown and grown, and yeah, like, everybody should read. Reading is great, especially considering that the average American reads less than one book a year. Please help me boost that average. Uh, um,
But if you're like me, you don't like dead tree media. You can get yourself a Kindle or something.
you can, and I don't
You
know
don't
how
you don't have to read books. Yeah.
true, and I don't know how it works over in the UK with your library system, but in the United States, you can also take out ebooks from the library.
I'm fairly certain you can as well in the UK. It's yeah. It's probably been
And
3 or 4 years since I've used the library, but I'm pretty sure that was the case 3 or 4 years ago. Yes.
I don't think I've stepped foot. I don't think I haven't set foot in the library since I graduated college.
Gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah,
G-
you
Yeah.
don't you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah. Hey, you might hate reading now, but trust me, Expert Archer, it's a great thing. Hoffnerd999, thank you for hopping in and joining us here today. I
Hoff,
imagine,
Hoff yeah, Hoff is he's one of our players, and Hoff is uh, he finds bugs like no one's business.
of course, that
Yeah,
has a strange
he
double meaning with your game.
indeed, yes, that's the joke that keeps on giving. Yeah.
But yeah, well, then Hoff, you obviously know who my guest is and what we're talking about today. But either way, I'm going to tell you anyways. This is Mike from Slug Disco. We're talking Empires of the Undergrowth. And if you've never been here to the show, I'm that Thom Clancy. I'm the host of this silly virtual reality performance capture podcast in which I generally talk to game developers, but also talk to virtual reality artists, a couple filmmakers, voice actors, really anyone that tells me yes that I think is moderately cool. But thankfully, I've been blessed with several really cool friends, and Liam has no problem with me reaching out to anybody who submits a game into hashtag pitch your game, which is also very helpful. But yeah, so man, I'm just like sitting here. I'm looking over at my questions over there. And okay, yeah, we talked about that. We talked about that. We talked about that. Probably would have been helpful if I'd had the time to play the demo before this, but you know, keeping like putting this show together is, kind
Yeah,
of
don't worry
crazy
about it, man.
sometimes.
I've played the demo. Yeah.
Okay,
One of us
good.
has. Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm glad that the person who should be familiar with the project is familiar with the project. That'd be really funny. You come on the show and you're just like, oh, they just hired me yesterday.
Yeah.
I haven't even finished reading the intro manual, but God, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. When the game was proposed or when the pitch came in and everything, I looked at it. I was like, kind of. But now, having actually talked to you, I do actually want to play this demo.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad of that. Yeah. Our pitch is it's very dramatic and big, like you say. But as we discussed earlier, yes, ants live big dramatic lives of their own scale. But we do hope, and a few people have said this to us, that we hope that if anything, that our game gives a little bit of appreciation for the undergrowth, for ants and beetles and spiders and all the things that live right under our feet that we often don't notice, because they have their own lives and their own struggles and their own successes and failures, and they really do deserve a little bit of love. And I know there are lots of people out there that do give them love, but lots of people that just dismiss them. So I'd hope that our game would inspire some people to consider that world a little bit more.
Well, I don't know about other people, but I will let you know that in our house, we name our house spiders.
Oh, that's great.
Because spiders have a tendency, especially if they find a good spot to set up a web that's going to continually provide them with food, have a tendency to stay there.
Yes, they will stay
And
there for months or years.
yeah, so we had last summer we had a spider that was living in the in between the screen and our window, right by our kitchen sink, and we named him Gordon. And Gordon was living pretty, like always multiple things stuck in his web, and we're just like,
Yep.
dude, how's he gonna eat all of that? And
Well,
he
he had
he
a
ended up,
larder.
yeah, he ended up not eating all of it, and then went somewhere else for to spend the winter, or died or whatever. We don't know. He just disappeared one day, and well, no spider has come to take over the place since. But they've gone up in other places. Like we had, I think
Yeah,
Franklin is.
the most common house spiders, I think, probably only live about a year. The ones that make webs in houses. So Gordon has probably gone to the big web in the sky, but God bless him for keeping your house slightly free of flies for that time.
Yeah, flies, mosquitoes, that's one I personally thoroughly detest. And I don't just mean for their like crazy malaria and other disease spreadingness. I just think that they're the most annoying thing on the planet.
Yes, I think I agree with you.
Yeah. And I live in America, so that's saying something. Uh, Expert Archer, I mean, I never wanted to keep ants and watch ants since I started playing the game. I've wanted them. That's like a box quote right there.
That is great. Yes, we've been amazed by this. Our game has obviously attracted some ant enthusiasts, but it's also on our forums, we've got some threads in the off-topic section of people who have since decided to take up ant keeping, and it can be a really easy hobby to do. For some really small ants, there's a really common one around most of the world called Lasius niger, which is a really tiny. It's otherwise known as the common garden ant. But if you can find a mated queen of them, they will quite happily live in a test tube. It's
Huh.
it's it's a really easy hobby to have if people want to do it.
Neat. Well, my wife, and well, mostly my wife, but I'm there for the support. She wants to keep honeybees, which I know aren't the same thing, but
Do you know what? Very closely related, though.
yeah,
Bees,
and
wasps, and ants, and all in the same family.
yeah, except I like bees and ants.
Yes, I don't like wasps either. I'm with you on that one. Yes.
Wasps and hornets are just like natural hate. It's like, what do they do? They literally just exist to hurt things.
Well, they do some pollinating. They do. I know there's the stereotype that they're useless. They do pollinate, but they all are also quite aggressive if you've got something sugary. So yeah.
Well, I don't mean that they're useless. I'm just saying that they are just biological hatred.
I understand. Yes, I lived in a small flat in London once, and there was a hornet nest near the exit, and I didn't spend much time in that flat.
I can understand that entirely. But that said, though, I do love London. I haven't been in Jesus over 20 years now.
Now, London, I lived in for about 3 years while I was in visual effects,
Nice.
but I don't live there currently.
I can't say that I blame you. I mean, it is also a very big city, and
Very big city.
yeah,
Yes, quite a lonely place if you don't have much family around.
I can understand that.
Yes, yeah, big cities are. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Wasps, hornets, they're just mean, man. Like don't get me wrong. Like spiders like creep me out and everything, but I know they're not mean. They're just trying to find a meal.
yes.
Uh,
I mean, it's the same with wasps. The difference between wasps and bees, I think, is bees get most of their protein from pollen, which they take at the same time as nectar from plants. But wasps get their protein from hunting that they feed to their larvae. So they'll be aggressive, and that means they'll sometimes come in conflict with people. But I agree. I don't want to be around wasps, but I can appreciate them.
Oh man, Hoffnerd saying that they had hornet nests in their window frame and they were removed before the summer, which is a very good move. Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Thankfully, they aren't something that we generally have to deal with too much. Thankfully, in cities we have like dumpsters and alleys and things like that, and
Yes.
well, hornets and wasps like to be closer to that stuff than residential areas, so winning. But man, I'm a. This has been a really fun talk.
Yeah.
Like, uh, I always enjoy an episode of the show where we can really kind of dive into super nerdy stuff. Uh, and I'm an all spectrum nerd, if you will. Like I could just as happily sit down and talk with a game developer as I could an astrophysicist. Uh,
It's you're the kind of person who could kind of lose several hours on Wikipedia by accident.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Usually I
Well,
end
that's
up
happened to me.
falling down like science channels on YouTube rabbit holes, though.
Fair enough.
PBS Space Time is a one of my favorites. Yeah, SciShow Space. I could go on, but we're not here to talk about YouTube channels I watch. Maybe some other show someday. We'll think about it. But I think it is just about time for the 5
Okay.
questions. So,
Right.
for everybody who this is their first time here at the show, the 5 questions are 5 questions that I have put together that have absolutely nothing to do with anything we've talked about beforehand. Sometimes they're themed, sometimes they're not. Today, they're not. Because
Okay.
I didn't want to ask you 5 questions about pangolins, aardvarks, and anteaters. Because, well, it just would have been 5 questions about why pangolins are the best animal in the world. So, these are all just getting to know you questions.
Sure.
Question number 1. Which is the better space superiority fighter? The X-Wing of the Rebel Alliance or the Colonial Viper from Battlestar Galactica?
X-wing.
Word. It's a good one. I do appreciate, though, that Battlestar Galactica does relatively maintain to the actual laws of physics. But the X-Wing's just great.
I don't necessarily want laws of physics in my sci-fi, if you know what I mean.
Well,
I'm not really a hard sci-fi fan.
man, you just haven't seen the right hard sci-fi yet.
Perhaps.
I highly recommend The Expanse, if you're unaware. Both the books
I have
and the
seen
show.
an episode. I've seen an episode. I've seen the pilot of The Expanse. Yes, I'd like to see more. Yes.
Oh yeah, no, that show's excellent. The most recent season, now that they have Amazon money, is so good. But not while we're here. Maybe one day. Like, if anybody who works on The Expanse is watching this, I don't care if you're like a grip. I want you on the show. So much. It's my current obsession. Also the books, so good.
Even if you're a runner on the show.
Yeah. If your job is literally just getting people cups of coffee, I want to know what types of coffee everyone on that show drinks. But yeah, question number 2: jelly or jam?
Jam, because I'm from the UK, for God's sake.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, there is a difference between jelly and jam, though.
Yes. Right. Let's just discuss this. Right. From what I gather, jam is a quite simple mix of stewed fruit with sugar. That's at least how I see it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I quite like jam spread on toast in the morning.
Yep.
Jelly for me is what you'd probably call jello.
Okay.
Yes.
Jelly is for the ants, right? So jelly for us is like jam,
Okay.
but the difference is that jam still has bits of the original fruit in it.
Oh, right.
So that's what that, and then we just call Jello Jello, but kind of
Okay,
like,
sure.
yeah. So that's a different, kind of like how you guys, and this is going back to biology stuff, tend to refer to hawks as buzzards, and we use buzzard as a term for vulture.
Sure. Okay.
I know this
Yeah,
because
it's
I
it's
used to be a
just
falconer.
cultural difference. Yeah.
Yep. And the reason we call vultures buzzards is because when the first falconers and whatnot that came over from Europe saw our large quantity of turkey vultures circling up around in the sky, because we have a lot more like tree-based hawk than on the continent, they just said, "Oh, look, it's buzzards," and then it just kind of caught with us, despite the fact that they were not buzzards. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So cool. Yeah, I'm a jelly guy. Like, if I want like chunks and stuff, I'll just eat the fruit.
Sure. So I'm a jam person then from that perspective. Yes,
Okay. So your answer does not change. So,
it
but
does not.
now we have some cultural understanding.
We
Thank you,
do.
parent nation. Don't worry, we're making the language better.
I'm sure this difference has never come up before.
Not
This is, we're,
once,
we're breaking
ever.
ground here, making history.
Yeah, I'm just taking out extraneous letters and spelling things with an ER as opposed to an RE. So, all right. Question number 3. What was the last book that you read?
The last book that I read was, in fact, because I do this every other year. In fact, the last, just a couple of months ago, the last book I read was Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Every other year, I reread that trilogy. And just 6 weeks ago, I reread The Return of the King for the I don't know how many
That
the time.
is dedication.
Yes, it's I've loved those books since I was little, and I just find myself wanting to go back to them because then I watch the movies and I remember details from the books, like was it different there and such like. And yes, it is dedication, but yes, I'm that kind of Tolkien nerd, I'm afraid.
The Two Towers is my favorite of the books.
I don't know.
Um,
I found the Two Towers a bit inconclusive.
yeah, and I get that. I really do. But I also found the Two Towers to be the most readable.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'd agree with you. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Because while I appreciate the depth that Tolkien went to when making Middle Earth, I really just wanted him to get to the story. Like, I didn't need the 5-chapter explanation of why Tom Bombadil is Tom Bombadil.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why I think there's a fair argument that the films are better than the books in some respect. They cut out a lot of the tome-like quality
Yeah.
of the books,
And they added a few things
and
that
I get
didn't
that.
need to be in there either. But
Well, this is true. But yes,
speaking of differences, though, there is one difference where the book was absolutely better than the movies, and it's in the Two Towers, only in the extended edition,
okay.
where Legolas and Gimli and everybody gets separated in the battle. And in the books, Legolas and Aragorn are looking for Gimli, and they're all like worried that he may be dead. And they find him, and he's bleeding fairly profusely from his head. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And all Gimli can think to say is, I believe, is give the count that he was up to and the orcs that he killed in the battle. And everybody's like, "Dude, you're bleeding from the head." And then he's all just like, "And the 43rd wore a metal collar round his neck and notched my axe."
Oh yes, the first notch he gets in his axe. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's just like,
my axe is finally notched.
and it's
Yeah.
just like he's more concerned about his weapon than he
Well,
is his own health. And I mean, it
yeah,
makes perfect sense. And
they're dwarves. They've got pretty thick skulls. I don't think
yeah.
he's that bothered. Yeah.
And it's just this great character moment. And then in the movie, it gets played for like a joke with like, "Oh, my axe is lodged in his nervous system." And I'm just like, okay, it's fitting for the tone of the movie, but it just, the book just had it so much better.
I agree. Yes, but there are lots of parts of the Lord of the Rings books which they're just Tolkien being Tolkien. But yes,
Yeah.
okay, fair enough. I agree with you on that point.
Yeah. Question number 4. What is your favorite show on the multitude of streaming platforms that we have at the moment?
It took me 2 seconds to think. The answer is Better Call Saul.
Oh, word. I've watched
Yes.
a few episodes of that. That's an excellent show.
Yes. Have you watched Breaking Bad?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite shows in history.
Yes. Breaking Bad was my favorite show before Better Call Saul was released. After it got into season 2 and 3 of Better Call Saul, I think it's honestly better.
Huh. That's, well, I guess I better go finish or get caught up with Better Call Saul.
I'd highly recommend it.
All right. Done. Sold. And then finally, question number 5. What is your favorite species of ant?
My favorite species of ant, personally, I think are trapjaw ants, which, again, we were saying earlier on about army ants, which feature in the game but are not playable. Trapjaw ants also feature in the game but are not playable because they don't fit into the nest idea that we have for our game. At least they're not playable in main missions. But they're called trapjaws because they have 2 appendages at the front of their mouths, which snap open or closed, which is the fastest moving appendage in the animal kingdom.
Huh.
It gets up to something like 20 Gs of force, and they can use it to either batter small enemies or, which is the way we use it in our game, they can fling themselves out of combat using their jaws with these really fast-moving snapping motion to get themselves out of danger. And I just think it's crazy that such a small creature can have the fastest moving thing. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense when you think about physics. It would be a small creature rather than a very large creature, wouldn't it? But I think they're still really cool, and I think they look awesome as well. So yeah, definitely Trapjaw ants are my favorite.
Nice. So they're kind of like the mantis shrimp of the ant kingdom.
Yes, that's exactly. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, you've seen the mantis shrimp in documentaries. They're a lot like that, but a bit smaller.
Yeah, those things are jerks.
They kind of are. But they've
So,
got very complex eyes, haven't they? Those.
yeah, because they have like a trinocular vision almost, and they see well outside of the visible spectrum of light, which is amazing for an animal that lives in a medium that light is generally not one of the primary means of detection.
It's probably why they're still around. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, damn, man, this has been a fun show.
It has. Thanks, Thom.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, Mike, before I cut to the bit where I say goodbye and everything like that, where can people find you in the game on social media?
You can find us. We go under Slug Disco rather than the game name on social media. So it's twitter.com/Slug Disco, facebook.com/Slug Disco, or slugdisco.com. You can find all of our information there. And we're also publishers for 2 other games as well. So on slugdisco.com, you can find information about those games if you'd like to as well. That's where you can find us, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Liam's got the Steam link in chat for Empires of the Undergrowth proper.
Cheers, Liam. Yeah, that's for our store page on Steam. Thank you.
And that's one of the reasons why Liam is a mod.
Great.
That, and he's kind of like my boss at Pitch Your Game, so I feel like I should do that. But I don't feel forced to do it at all. But once again, Mike, thank you so much for being here. It has been really fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Thom.
Yay, talking science. But this is the time of the show where I now switch over to my fancy close-up camera, and I say to you in the audience, thank you for joining us today. It's been really fun having you here. Main reason I do the show is for you guys. I want to introduce you all to as many cool people as possible because, well, it's just fun. Raptor 575, dab for you. It would look cooler if I had arms, but at the same time, I get to like defy the rules of physics in doing it without arms. So if you've enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit that follow button. I do this 4 to 5 days a week. If not, that's cool too. but I'm just glad you were here. Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm going to be having one of the guys behind Dwarf Romantic, the gold medal game from last month's Pitcher Game Awards. And then on Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, I have UK-based virtual reality artist VR Rosie. I've been trying to get her on the show for a while, so I'm really glad that I got the chance to make that happen. No show on Friday this week. Power's going to be out, people fixing the house, which I'm not complaining about, but I'm just hoping that it's not going to be a crazy hot day stuck in my house with no electricity. Other than that, folks, I got nothing. So thank you all for joining us today on the episode of That Thom Clancy Show. I will see you all tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. But until then, have a wonderful night. Have a great day. Wear your mask, tip your waitress, drink some water, and, treat yourself to something nice, because I don't know what your day was like, but I'm sure you deserve it. So thank you all very much, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning.